You are mine. The cruel alpha branded me in front of my fiancé. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of blood red and gold as the kingdom of Elindor prepared for its grandest celebration of the year. Torches flickered along the marble streets, and music floated through the evening air, weaving a delicate spell over the crowded city. Nobles in gilded gowns and embroidered tunics whispered behind fans and handkerchiefs, gossiping about the young lady who was to be the pride of the royal family, the bride-to-be, Lady Seraphine. Seraphine moved gracefully through the ballroom, her pale blue dress shimmering like moonlight. She kept her gaze lowered, careful not to draw too much attention, though whispers followed her every step. She was engaged to Prince Aldrich, a man of noble lineage and cold composure. Though kind enough, his love for her felt formal and measured, like a carefully penned letter rather than a heartbeat shared. Tonight, she should have been happy. Tonight, she should have felt the warmth of anticipation for a life that promised stability and respect. But instead, a strange unease had settled in her chest, tight and unrelenting, as if the shadows themselves were leaning in to watch. The ballroom doors burst open with a gust of wind that carried a chill through the assembled guests. Brr. Gasps rose as a figure stepped in from the darkened night outside. He was tall, cloaked in black that shimmered like liquid shadow, and his presence seemed to absorb the light around him. Eyes like molten gold scanned the crowd, and a low murmur spread like wildfire. The Alpha had arrived. No one knew his name, yet every nobleman and woman in Elindor had heard tales of his power. He was a hunter of kingdoms, a man both feared and revered, whose whispers of conquest and mystery traveled faster than the wind. And now he was here, in Seraphine's world, in the place that should have been safe. Prince Aldrich demanded, his voice rigid, echoing through the hall. His hand tightened around the hilt of his ceremonial sword. The Alpha's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I come for what is already mine," he said, his voice low, smooth and heavy with command. The words wrapped around the room like silk, but with an edge sharp enough to cut. Seraphine felt her heartbeat stutter. There was something about the way he looked at her that made her breath hitch. His gaze was claiming, possessive, yet it carried a weight she could not explain. A strange pull she could neither resist nor understand. Prince Aldrich stepped forward, placing himself between her and the Alpha. "This is a royal hall," he said, his tone tense. "Bearing, you have no right to speak here in such a manner." The Alpha's eyes flicked to the prince, a shadow of amusement crossing his face. "Rights," he murmured, almost to himself, "are meaningless when fate has already decided." He stepped closer, each movement measured, deliberate, and terrifyingly confident. Before anyone could intervene, the Alpha reached for Seraphine. A faint glow, like liquid fire, danced across his fingers, and a symbol appeared on her wrist, a brand, dark and intricate, glowing with an otherworldly light. Nobles whispered in disbelief. Aldrich's face went pale, his hand trembling as he struggled to understand what had just happened. Seraphine's body froze, a strange warmth spreading from the mark. It wasn't painful, yet it burned with a sensation she could not name. Fear mixed with a strange curiosity, and she could not tear her eyes away from the Alpha. "You are mine," the Alpha said, his voice a whisper meant only for her, yet it echoed in her mind as if he had spoken directly to her soul. Aldrich's anger roared. "Release her at once!" He drew his sword, but the Alpha merely stepped back, the shadows swirling around him like a living cloak, making him impossible to touch. The room was filled with tension so thick it pressed against Seraphine's chest, making her breath come in short, shallow bursts. I claim only what destiny has chosen, the Alpha said, Brie. She is bound to me now, whether you approve or not. The whispers of nobles turned into murmurs of fear. Some fled the hall, others stood frozen, unable to look away from the unfolding scene. Seraphine felt an invisible tether tighten around her chest, connecting her to the Alpha in a way that frightened her. And yet, there was something in it that made her pulse quicken, a strange thrill she could not understand. Prince Aldrich's hands shook as he tried to assert his authority, but the Alpha's gaze met his, and even he faltered. There was a power in that look, a quiet certainty that defied logic and reason. "This is not over," Aldrich hissed, his pride wounded and his control slipping like sand through his fingers. With a faint smile, the Alpha withdrew into the shadows. The doors of the ballroom swung open, and before anyone could react, he vanished, leaving the mark glowing softly on Seraphine's wrist, a reminder of his claim and of the danger that now surrounded her. The hall was silent for a long moment, the only sound the flickering of torches and the whispers of those too shocked to move. Seraphine's mind raced. She looked down at her wrist, tracing the symbol with trembling fingers. It pulsed faintly, almost like it had a heartbeat of its own. Aldrich knelt beside her, his hand gripping hers, trembling with a mixture of fear and fury.
"Are you hurt?" he asked, though his voice wavered.
I don't know, she whispered. It doesn't hurt, but it feels strange.
Alive, somehow. Aldrich's jaw tightened. "I will find him."
"No one will humiliate my family or claim what belongs to me."
His voice was fierce, but there was a shadow in his eyes, fear, uncertainty, and an inkling that this Alpha was unlike any foe he had faced before.
Seraphine shook her head. "I don't think I want him gone," she admitted, the words trembling on her lips. Even as she said them, her heart betrayed her, caught in a tug of war between fear, shame, and an unfamiliar longing.
"You cannot mean that," Aldrich said sharply, unable to hide his hurt.
After what this means," he faltered, unsure how to voice his disbelief. But Seraphine could not explain it. She did not understand why the mark burned gently against her skin, why her thoughts kept drifting to the Alpha, or why her pulse thrummed whenever she remembered the intensity in his gaze. It frightened her, and yet it also stirred something she had never felt before. A spark of courage, a sense of destiny intertwining with the shadows.
As the court began to recover from the shock, Seraphine slipped away from the ballroom.
She needed air, needed space to understand the storm that had been unleashed upon her life. Outside, the gardens were bathed in the silver light of the rising moon. The air smelled of wet earth and night-blooming flowers, sharp and sweet, all at once. And then she felt it. A presence, a shadow moving silently among the trees. Her breath caught in her throat. The Alpha stepped from the darkness, his cloak trailing like a ripple of midnight. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said, his voice low, almost a caress. "The bond." The mark. It is not merely mine. It has chosen you, as much as it has chosen me. Seraphine's heart pounded. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you are not like the others," he replied, stepping closer, the glow of the mark flickering in the moonlight. "You have fire beneath your calm, courage beneath your fear." Desperation. "You are mine not by cruelty, but by fate." Fear and fascination collided inside her. She wanted to resist, to flee back to the safety of her arranged life with Aldrich.
yet something in her ached to understand him, to see the world through the shadowed light he carried.
The Alpha extended a hand, as if offering her a choice she did not yet understand. "Come with me," he said, "or stay in a world that no longer holds you, where your destiny has already passed you by." Her mind reeled. She thought of Aldrich, of the life she had planned, and of the honor and duty that bound her. Yet the mark throbbed against her wrist, a pulse that echoed in her very bones, calling her to something far greater, far darker, and far more real than she had ever known. She looked into the Alpha's eyes, golden, unyielding, and impossibly deep. Something within her stirred, a trembling certainty that nothing would ever be the same. And then, as the moonlight spilled over the garden, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the Alpha's words directly to her heart. "You are mine." Unsure whether to fight or surrender, and the night swallowed them both, leaving the palace, the prince, and the world she knew behind. The ballroom would never forget her disappearance. Neither would she, Bert. And neither would Aldrich, whose rage and fear now burned hotter than any fire in the kingdom, because the Alpha had marked her. And fate, it seemed, had claimed her too. The forest lay heavy under a moonless sky, its trees tall and twisted, their branches like the fingers of ancient giants. Seraphine followed silently behind the Alpha, her wrist still tingling from the brand that marked her as his. Every step into the dark woods felt like stepping further from the world she had known, and closer to a destiny she could not yet understand. The Alpha moved with a predator's grace, silent, confident, and alert. His presence seemed to push the shadows aside, but at the same time the darkness clung to him, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Seraphine tried to steady her breathing. Fear fought with fascination, confusion with longing. She did not understand why the mark pulsed against her skin, or why her heart seemed drawn to him, even when every thought screamed for caution. "You are tense," the Alpha said, his voice low, cutting through the stillness. "Relax." "The woods are dangerous, but you have nothing to fear, if you trust me."
I don't know if I can trust anyone, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper.
Especially after tonight. He glanced at her, his golden eyes reflecting the faint starlight. "You trust your instincts more than most," he said. "It is why the mark chose you." Seraphine swallowed hard. "Why me?" She asked again, though she already sensed the answer was more than simple. "Because you are not like the others," he said, stepping closer. "Your heart is stronger than your fear. Your mind is sharper than your doubt. And your spirit. It burns, even when it trembles. That is rare." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. He spoke as if he saw into the deepest parts of her, parts she herself had not dared to explore. She wanted to flee, yet she could not. Something in his gaze anchored her, binding her to him as surely as the mark did on her wrist. The forest seemed alive, whispering in voices she could almost understand. Strange lights flickered between the trees, and the distant howls of unseen creatures echoed across the dark. Seraphine shivered, realizing that the Alpha's world was not the same as the one she had always known. Here magic pulsed like a living thing, and danger was not just possible. It was inevitable. They reached a clearing, where a small stream reflected the faint light of phosphorescent moss. The Alpha stopped and turned to her. "Rest here," he commanded gently, though his eyes carried the weight of authority she could not ignore. "You need strength." Tonight was only the beginning. Seraphine sank to the ground, brushing the damp grass from her skirts. Brr. The mark on her wrist pulsed with warmth, as if alive. "Only the beginning?" she echoed, unease tightening her chest. Inspiration. "Yes," he said, crouching beside her. "There are those who will come for you." Brr. "The court does not forgive what has been done. Your fiancé, he will not forget this insult, and others will see the mark and know that you belong to me."
Pray. Her heart twisted.
Belong to you? She whispered.
Inspiration. The words felt foreign, like a language she was only beginning to understand. "You are mine," he said softly, almost a whisper meant for her ears alone. Inspiration, but by necessity.
And if you survive this night, you will understand what I mean.
The wind stirred, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint tang of magic. Seraphine shivered, not entirely from cold. Inspiration. Something in the Alpha's voice, in the way he moved and looked at her, stirred an unfamiliar thrill. An attraction she both feared and could not deny.
"I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her fingers brushing the mark.
"I don't even know what this is anymore." He placed a hand over hers, his touch firm, commanding, yet not harsh. The warmth of his skin against the mark sent a shiver up her spine.
You will, he said, because you are stronger than you think.
And because I will not let anything happen to you. Not if I can stop it. Paste car. Inspiration. But the thought of the court, the whispers, and the looming danger made her realize that safety might no longer exist. With the Alpha, danger existed too, but it was alive, urgent, and somehow honest. Hours passed as they moved through the forest, the Alpha leading her deeper into his territory. They avoided the main paths, slipping silently between shadows, his movements precise and predatory. Seraphine began to see glimpses of his world. Caves etched with strange symbols, a fortress hidden among towering cliffs, and the remnants of battles fought long before her birth. "Why do you hide here?" she asked finally, her voice trembling.
If you are so powerful, why not walk openly among the kingdoms? Power without caution is suicide, he said. I protect what is mine. I cannot protect you if I am destroyed by the foolishness of others. She thought of Aldrich and the court, of a life of careful politeness and measured love.
She realized then that she had never felt truly alive until this moment, when the air was heavy with danger, magic, and possibility. Her pulse raced, both from fear and breath, something else she could not name. Night deepened. They arrived at a cliffside overlooking a valley blanketed in mist. The Alpha paused, his gaze sweeping across the valley, sharp and alert. "This is where you rest," he said. "You cannot see the dangers below, but they exist." Wolves, creatures born of the old magic, and worse, those who would use your mark for their gain.
Seraphine felt the weight of his words settle over her.
She could not deny the danger nor the power that radiated from him. And yet, a strange trust began to take root, fragile and trembling, in the soil of fear. "You could leave me," she said softly. "You could abandon me in the forest and I would have no way back." The Alpha turned his gaze to her, golden eyes piercing.
"I do not abandon what is mine," he said firmly, "and neither does the mark."
"You are bound to me now, whether you wish it or not. But do not mistake this for cruelty. It is necessity, and in time it may become understanding." Seraphine felt her chest tighten. She wanted to pull away, to fight the magnetic pull that bound her to him. And yet the thought of being truly alone in the dark, hunted and vulnerable, made her realize that she might have no choice. Hours passed in tense silence. The forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with unseen eyes and whispers that danced in the shadows. Seraphine's fear did not leave, but a strange resilience began to bloom, a courage she had not known she possessed. She realized she could survive this night, perhaps even thrive, but only if she trusted him, only if she learned to read the shadows as he did. Suddenly, movement in the trees made her heart leap. Figures emerged, masked men, cloaked in dark fabric, eyes glinting with cruel intent. Seraphine's breath caught in her throat. The Alpha moved instantly, stepping in front of her. Shadows swirled around him, thick and solid, as if the darkness itself answered his command. "You should have stayed in your palace," one of the attackers sneered. "The mark does not belong to you. She belongs to us." "Not while I stand," the Alpha growled, his voice carrying the weight of storms and mountains. In a blur, he moved with impossible speed, disarming one attacker, sending another sprawling into the shadows. Seraphine watched, awe and terror mingling in her chest. He was both protector and predator, dangerous and unwavering. The attackers retreated, leaving Seraphine trembling on the cliffside. The Alpha turned to her, his golden eyes softening for the briefest moment. "Do you understand now why you cannot return to the palace?" he asked. She nodded slowly, the wind tangling in her hair. "Yes. I think I do. You have a choice," he said, stepping closer. "Stay here and learn the truth of your mark and your destiny, or return to the life you thought you wanted, where shadows and danger will follow you no matter what." Seraphine's gaze fell to her wrist, where the mark glowed faintly in the moonlight. She could feel it pulsing, alive, insistent. Somewhere deep within, a part of her already knew the choice she must make. I will stay," she whispered. The Alpha's expression softened, a fleeting shadow of a smile touching his lips. "Good," he said. "You have made the first step." "There is much to learn, and danger is only beginning. But you will not face it alone."
I will teach you, and you will grow stronger than you imagine." Seraphine shivered, not entirely from the cold.
The forest seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting. She did not know what the future held. Monsters, enemies, curses. But for the first time, she felt alive in the way she had never known in the palace. The night stretched on, and the forest whispered around them, alive with secrets and magic. Seraphine looked at the Alpha, who stood vigil over her like a shadowed guardian, and felt the pulse of the mark alive against her skin, binding her to him. Somewhere in the distance, the first hints of dawn began to touch the horizon, pale and hesitant. But Seraphine knew the dawn would not bring peace. It would bring new dangers, new revelations, and new challenges that would test her heart, her courage, and her loyalty. And yet, for the first time, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps in this darkness she could find strength. Perhaps she could even find inspiration. The Alpha's gaze met hers, steady, unyielding, and golden. "Tonight was only the beginning," he murmured. "And tomorrow, the world will remember your name, or it will try to destroy it." Seraphine swallowed hard, gripping the hem of her skirts. Her heart raced, fear and anticipation entwined. She did not know if she was ready, but she could not turn back. The shadows around them stirred. Somewhere deep in the forest, eyes glinted. The world was watching. And Seraphine had taken the first step into a life she could never leave behind. The sun had barely risen when the forest stirred with whispers of unseen dangers. Seraphine sat on the edge of a moss-covered rock, her eyes tracing the movements of the trees and shadows around the Alpha. He was already awake, standing silently at the edge of the clearing, golden eyes scanning the horizon as if he could see the world beyond their sight. The night had left its mark on her. The events of the previous evening, the attack, the flight through the forest, the strange warmth of the mark on her wrist had unsettled her, yet also awakened something inside her that she had never known. Fear still clung to her, but beneath it was a spark of courage, a fragile thread of understanding that maybe she could survive this world after all.
"You did well last night," the Alpha said, his voice low and steady.
Most would have panicked, but you held your ground even when the danger was close. Seraphine's cheeks flushed at the praise, though a part of her wanted to argue.
I was terrified, she admitted, brushing a strand of hair from her face.
Rasp.
I don't know how I did it! I just moved!
"That is how courage begins," he said, stepping closer.
Not in the absence of fear, but because you moved despite it. She looked at him, noticing details she had not before. The way the shadows seemed to bend around him, the tension in his shoulders even in rest, the unyielding strength that radiated from him.
He was dangerous, yes, but also real. Vulnerable in ways he did not show, even to himself. They moved deeper into the forest. Seraphine followed silently, absorbing every sound and movement. The Alpha led her through hidden paths, past streams that glowed with faint magical light, and through groves where the trees seemed almost alive, bending and swaying as if whispering secrets only they could hear. You must understand, the Alpha said after a long silence. The mark you bear is not a mere symbol. It connects you to me, yes, but also to a power older than the kingdoms. It awakens things that lie dormant in the blood, in the heart, in the soul. And it does not choose lightly.
Seraphine pressed her fingers to the mark, feeling it thrum beneath her skin. I feel it, she whispered.
Sometimes it's warm. Other times, it feels like it's warning me of something.
Both are true, he said.
The mark is alive. It will protect you when it can, guide you when it must, and warn you when danger approaches. But it will not shield you from your own choices.
The mark pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, and she realized it was more than just a brand. It was a living connection, binding her to him in ways she could not yet understand. And somewhere deep within, a part of her felt both frightened and drawn. Hours passed in tense silence. They reached a small valley where the remnants of an old fortress stood, half swallowed by the earth and overgrown with vines. The Alpha gestured toward the ruins. Here you will rest. Here you will begin to learn. Seraphine stepped carefully among the stones, the weight of the past pressing down on her. The fortress had once been home to warriors, kings, and those who wielded power with ambition and fear. Now it was a place of shadows and echoes, alive with whispers of history and magic. As night fell again, Seraphine felt a presence. She turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness, one of the masked attackers from the previous night. Her heart leapt in terror, But the Alpha was already moving, shadows swirling around him like a protective cloak. "You should not have followed," he said, his voice sharp with warning. The figure lunged, and the Alpha's movements were swift, controlled, and merciless. Within moments, the intruder was disarmed and retreating into the shadows. Seraphine's hands shook. "Why do they want me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because of the mark," he said, "because of what it represents. You are not just a noblewoman now. You are a key to power, a beacon to those who would seek to control it." Fear mingled with something else, something she could not name. The Alpha's presence was overwhelming, commanding, yet there was a protection in it that made her chest tighten. She realized then that she could not imagine facing this world alone, and perhaps she did not want to. The Alpha studied her, golden eyes unreadable. "You will need to learn to trust me," he said quietly. "Not blindly, but with understanding. There is a path ahead, and it will test both your strength and your heart." Seraphine nodded, uncertain. "And if I fail, you will not," he said firmly, "because I will not let you. And because the mark has chosen you for a reason. Your courage, your heart, your resilience, these will carry you through." Days passed, each filled with training, lessons in survival, and cautious instruction. The Alpha taught her to move silently, to listen to the whispers of the forest, and to feel the flow of magic in the world around them. Seraphine discovered strengths she had never known, the ability to sense danger before it arrived, the courage to face creatures that once would have terrified her, and a growing awareness of the power the mark granted her. At night, when the forest was quiet, the Alpha would speak of the curse that haunted him, the tragedy that had shaped him into the man he was. He had lost family, betrayed allies, and carried a burden of responsibility that no one could understand. Yet in his golden eyes, Seraphine saw flashes of vulnerability. Moments when the cruel, commanding Alpha gave way to a man shaped by pain, longing, and the need for redemption.
"You see me as cruel," he said one night sitting across from her by the flickering fire. "And in many ways, I am."
"I do what I must to survive, to protect what is mine, to maintain control. But cruelty is not who I am beneath the armor." Seraphine looked at him, her heart aching with an unfamiliar tenderness.
"I don't see only cruelty," she said softly.
"I see someone who is afraid. Afraid of losing what matters most, afraid of being hurt, and afraid of letting anyone close." He regarded her silently for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps," he admitted. "Perhaps you see more than most, but be careful. You may see too much, and in seeing, you may be forced to choose." Psh! She felt the weight of his words and the pull of her heart, tangled with fear, admiration, and a longing she barely understood. She realized she was changing, becoming someone stronger, braver, more alive. And yet she feared what that change meant, for both herself and for the Alpha who had claimed her. One evening a messenger arrived, emerging from the forest like a shadow itself. It carried news from the kingdom. Aldrich was not idle. He had gathered allies, whispered secrets, and sent hunters into the forests to reclaim what he considered his. Seraphine's heart tightened. "He's coming," she said quietly. "He will not let this go." The Alpha's gaze hardened, shadows flaring around him.
Then we must be ready, he said, and you must trust your instincts more than ever.
Brrr. The forest will test you, and so will he. Berate. For days they prepared, moving through the forest, avoiding detection and strengthening the bond between them. The Alpha's teaching was relentless, but she felt herself growing stronger, her fear transforming into focus, her hesitation into skill, breath. And through it all, the emotional tension between them deepened. An unspoken pull, a magnetic attraction that neither dared name aloud, but that simmered in every glance, every touch, every shared silence. Brr. The night before the expected confrontation, Seraphine found herself sitting near the fire, the mark on her wrist glowing faintly. The Alpha stood nearby, his eyes scanning the forest. Inspiration. Do you understand what may happen tomorrow? He asked quietly.
I think so, she said.
Bert, but I'm still afraid.
Good, he said softly, stepping closer. Fear sharpens you.
Inspiration.
It makes you alive, and it reminds you what you are protecting.
Her chest tightened, torn between fear and fascination.
I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted.
Bird, you are, he said, kneeling beside her. Because you have chosen to stand, because you have learned to see the truth. And because when the time comes, you will not face it alone. Inspiration. The forest seemed to hold its breath that night, alive with anticipation, shadows thick and unyielding. Somewhere in the distance, Aldrich's forces moved, bringing the threat ever closer. Inspiration. The Alpha's eyes glimmered with golden fire as he turned to her. Tomorrow, he said, voice low, we will see if the bond, the mark, the destiny, the choice can withstand the world. Inspiration.
Or if it will break.
Seraphine swallowed hard, gripping the edge of her cloak. She did not know if she was ready for the trials ahead, nor did she fully understand the feelings swelling in her chest. But one thing was certain. The bond, the mark, the destiny, and the Alpha who had claimed her had changed her forever. Inspiration. And as the night stretched on, shadows stirring and the wind whispering through the trees, Seraphine realized that the forest, the mark, and the Alpha were no longer simply parts of a dangerous world. They were now part of her. Dawn broke over the forest, spilling pale gold and silver light across the valley. Mist curled around the roots of ancient trees, and the ruins of the fortress where Seraphine had trained the past weeks seemed almost alive, holding its breath as the first steps of destiny approached. Seraphine stood near the edge of a cliff, the mark on her wrist glowing softly. She could feel it pulsing with urgency as if warning her, guiding her. The Alpha moved beside her, shadows clinging to him like a living cloak, his eyes scanning the forest with sharp precision. Inspiration. Somewhere in the mist, Aldrich's hunters approached, silent and relentless.
You feel it, the Alpha murmured, golden eyes meeting hers.
The bond reacts to danger. You must trust it. Trust yourself and trust me.
Inspiration.
Seraphine swallowed hard. I do, she said, though her voice trembled.
I'm ready. The Alpha gave a faint nod. Then let it begin. Through the thickening mist, figures emerged, men and women clad in dark armor, eyes sharp with purpose, swords gleaming.
At their center was Aldrich, his expression twisted with fury and disbelief. He stepped forward, voice carrying across the valley.
Seraphine! He called. Return to me!
You do not belong here. Seraphine's heart ached at the sight of him, the life she might have had, the safety of the palace. But the mark burned against her wrist, and she felt the truth within it. She could not go back.
Not now. Not ever.
I belong where I choose to be, she said, her voice steady, stronger than she had expected. I choose here.
I choose him. The Alpha stepped forward, golden eyes glowing, shadows swirling around him. Back away, he said quietly, but his presence radiated a warning.
You cannot claim her, and you will not try. Aldrich's face twisted. You cannot take what is mine.
You never understood her, the Alpha said, voice low, smooth, carrying the weight of truth.
Brand. And now it is too late. She is not yours to command. Bert. The tension crackled like lightning across the valley. Brr. Then, without warning, the hunters charged. Steel clashed with steel, and shadows danced across the ruins as the Alpha moved with inhuman speed, defending Seraphine, striking with precision and power. Brr. She watched, heart pounding, as he fought not with cruelty, but with relentless protection. Fear surged through her chest, but so did something else, something she could not deny. Brr.
She felt alive, aware of every heartbeat, every breath, every movement in the forest. The mark pulsed against her skin, glowing brighter, connecting her to the Alpha, their destinies entwined.
She stepped forward, finding courage she had never known. Alpha! She called. Brr.
I can help! He glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his golden eyes. Be careful, he warned, but he did not stop her.
Brr. Using what he had taught her, Seraphine moved among the shadows, evading strikes, guiding the energy of the mark, feeling it pulse in tandem with the Alpha's strength. Together, they became a force neither human nor fully magical, moving in harmony, a dance of shadows and light. Brr. The battle raged on, fierce but brief. The hunters, skilled though they were, could not match the Alpha's speed or Seraphine's instinct, sharpened by the mark. Bert. One by one they faltered, retreating into the mist, leaving Aldrich alone at the edge of the clearing. He stepped forward, chest heaving, eyes blazing. "This isn't over," he shouted. "You cannot escape me, Seraphine!" Seraphine looked at him, steady and resolute. Inspiration.
I am not yours, she said softly but firmly. Not now.
Bray.
Not ever. Aldrich's fists clenched, and for a moment the air seemed to thrum with tension, as if the world itself waited for the next move.
But the Alpha stepped between them, golden eyes fixed on Aldrich. "You will leave," he said, voice calm but unyielding. "Bray. And if you value your life, you will never return to claim her." For a long moment, Aldrich glared, and then, slowly, he lowered his sword. Pride and fury warred within him, but he could see now that this was not a battle he could win. He backed away, disappearing into the forest, leaving Seraphine and the Alpha standing together amidst the mist and ruins. Silence fell, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the trees. Seraphine's chest heaved with relief, fear, and a strange exhilaration. She looked at the Alpha, golden eyes soft now, shadows curling around him like protective hands.
"You were incredible," he said quietly.
More than I could have hoped. She smiled faintly, brushing damp hair from her face. "I had a good teacher." He inclined his head, shadows flickering across his expression. "And I had a good student," he said. "Stronger than I expected, braver than I dared believe." For a long moment they stood in silence, the forest around them alive with the echoes of battle and magic. And Seraphine spoke, voice trembling with emotion. "Why? Why did you claim me? Why me?" The Alpha's gaze softened, shadows lifting slightly from his face. "Because you are
like no one I have ever known, he said. Because I have been cursed by my past, by loss, by power I cannot control. Not just the alpha, the hunter, the shadow, but me. And I could not let that slip away. Breath. Her chest tightened. You could have left me.
You didn't have to fight. To protect me. To... Her voice caught.
Inspiration. To care. I did, he said simply, because cruelty alone cannot shape destiny. Inspiration. Only choices, courage, trust, and connection can do that. You have given me something I did not think I could have again. Hope. Burst.
And I will not waste it.
Seraphine felt tears prick her eyes. Burn.
For the first time, she saw the man behind the shadowed alpha, the one who had been hurt, betrayed, and burdened with a curse, but who could also love, protect, and transform. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against the mark.
Beret pulsed warmly, a living connection between them, stronger now after the battle.
I choose you, she said. Not out of fear, not because of the mark, but because I want to. The alpha's golden eyes softened, and for the first time the shadow seemed to recede, leaving only the man beneath.
He reached out, fingers brushing hers, and the warmth of the mark flared gently, as if approving. You have no idea what that means to me, he whispered. Inspiration. To be seen, to be trusted, to be chosen. They stood together on the cliff, the morning sun spilling over the forest in ruins, casting everything in gold and silver light. The forest seemed to exhale, releasing the tension, the danger, and the shadowed fear. For the first time there was peace, a fragile, radiant peace that held the promise of a future.
Days passed as they returned to the ruins, rebuilding, exploring, learning.
Seraphine's strength grew, as did her understanding of the mark and the bond it represented. She and the Alpha trained together, laughed together, and shared quiet moments beneath the stars. What had begun as fear, confusion, and tension blossomed into trust, respect, and the deep stirrings of love.
An unspoken understanding that both had been changed forever by their connection. The world beyond the forest still existed, filled with politics, dangers, and shadows.
Aldrich still lingered in the kingdom, a reminder that the past could not be entirely erased. But for Seraphine and the Alpha, those threats had less power than the bond they shared, forged through struggle, courage, and trust. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the ruins in fire gold and deep violet, Seraphine stood at the edge of the cliff, the Alpha beside her. The mark on her wrist pulsed gently, alive but calm, a symbol of destiny fulfilled in a future yet to be written. Britt, you've changed me, he said softly.
You've made me believe in something I thought impossible.
Redemption, hope, love.
And you've changed me, she said, taking his hand.
Made me stronger, braver, more alive than I could have imagined. I trust you. A smile, faint but warm, curved his lips. Then we will face the world together, he said. And whatever comes, we will survive it.
Not because we are fearless, but because we are stronger together.
The forest stretched out before them, alive with possibility. The past, the palace, the court, the threats remained, but their hearts were bound now, their destinies entwined.
And in that moment, beneath the rising moon and the first stars of night, Seraphine and the Alpha understood that power, trust, and love were not opposites but parts of the same story. One they would write together in shadow and light. The mark on her wrist glowed softly, a gentle pulse that promised protection, connection, and a future shaped by courage and choice. Inspiration. And as they stood together, the ruins and forest stretching endlessly before them, the first faint whispers of an even greater adventure stirred in the wind, one that neither had yet imagined, but one they would face as one. Because they were no longer master and subject, hunter and hunted, shadow and light. They were partners, bound by destiny, by courage, and by hearts that had been tempered in the crucible of fear and trust. The world would never forget them.